Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. On today's episode, we are going to be reviewing the penultimate game week and previewing, the final game week of the season. We've got three guests on the pod with me today. I'm your host, Sam Stattorino.
I'm Izzy Duddy.
I'm Jacob Bernstein.
And I'm Tom Marr.
Yes, welcome listener to, I guess the penultimate of the sort of regular podcasts from Decoding the WSL in our debut season. It's currently Tuesday, the 6th of May, as we record in the evening. I've got three guests on with me today. Izzy Duddy, you heard first there. Izzy, how are you doing? Fresh off, well, not quite fresh because we obviously missed last week, but you've been doing a bit of running since you were last on.
I have been doing a bit of running, and then I also did a bit of heat stroke. So yes, I'm fresh out of a very successful half marathon, which I ran. And I'll be finishing the marathon at some point in the future year, maybe.
The famous London half marathon.
Exactly.
I mean, it's more running than I've done since then, so you've at least got one up on me.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a medal, but I did get the excuse to just not finish it and not go through what sounded like complete hell. So
really, you just got the good bit at the start.
Yeah, I got the good bit, and now I can drink again. So I had a few beers and forgot all about it. Yeah, it's all good.
Happy days. Sounds like a good day. As well on the pod today, we've got two voices that you probably or may have heard yesterday in a special podcast that was put out. We'll come to that in a moment. But yeah, we've got two more guests on. We've got Tom Marr. Tom, how are we doing?
All good, Sam. All good. Yeah, we had a great time with Jacob, and we enjoyed some WSL football. We're trying to make the most of it now. Just one more game week, Gosh, how about yourself, Sam? How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I'm rested up after sort of a week off, I guess, from the WSL because I wasn't at any of the games this weekend, although we'll be at the Emirates this Sunday. But yeah, then we've got Jacob as well. First trip as in the press box at Spurs. How was that?
Oh, it was an amazing experience. Absolutely loved it. But I think from a Spurs women perspective, I can't wait to see the end of the season. I think it's been a rough couple of months. But yeah, incredible day out at the press box with Tom.
Yeah, well. I think you're lucky that Crystal Palace have been pretty bad this season. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a relegation scrap with you guys involved. But yeah, you can hear the episode with Jacob and Tom at the Spurs Stadium from Sunday's game, but it was released yesterday at the game for Spurs 0 Chelsea 1, which we'll come to later in probably not quite as much detail as you went through on yesterday's pod. But yeah, it's a really good episode. I really enjoyed putting it together, mostly because Jacob did 90% of the editing for me, so that made it nice and easy. But yeah, do go check it out. It will be in your podcast feeds. It is a really good episode, and you don't have to hear my voice on it, so you get a bit of variety. Anyway, let's get ahead to today's pod. Let's firstly have a look back at the fixtures that were on this weekend. Sunday was Derby Day. First up, the Merseyside Derby. That was blue after Everton's 2-0 victory away at Liverpool. Then in Manchester, it was United that had their ducks in a row as Mallard scored the goal to secure Champions League football for the Red Devils at the expense of Man City. Elsewhere, there was nothing to separate the Eagles and the Foxes as both sides scored in injury time in a 2-2 draw. Chelsea made it 16 wins in 16 games against Spurs in their trip to North London. And the day rounded off with the two most informed teams in the league, with Villa edging out a close encounter away at West Ham. Finally, it was Blue Monday as the blue and white strike to Brighton ran out 4-2 victors over Arsenal, who were left feeling very blue. But we're going to start the pod with the Manchester Derby. Yes, we're starting off with what I think was the main game of the weekend. We probably all expected it to be the feistiest game of the weekend, and I think it definitely was. It was United 2, Man City 2. It was nice to see Lauren Hemp get a first WSL start in quite a while for Manchester City, but it was Manchester United that will be the much happier with the result. Obviously, that 2-2 draw, meaning that they have now secured Champions League qualification for next season at the expense of Man City, who will not be playing any Champions League football. It was a game that was, like I said, it was a bit feisty. Eva Mannion actually came on, I think it was about half an hour in for the injured Jade Riviere and still managed to get herself sent off, which I think kind of shows the sort of game that it was. Man City did well to score 2 goals in this game. United have only conceded 5 goals all season at home, so for 40% of those to be in this game is quite a feat for Man City, but also shows how well United have been playing defensively. Tom, how did you sort of expect this game to go, and was this sort of reflective of that?
Yeah, I think we spoke about it a little while back on the pod about how playing at Old Trafford, we weren't sure if that was the right call for this game because they do seem to be a bit more comfortable at Lee Sports Village, United. And it felt like for the first half an hour, that was exactly what was happening, 2-0 down, the first half, 2-0 down. I thought City, I was really impressed. It just kind of, it felt a lot like, it was just so obvious how much they'd missed Greenwood and Hemp to have, even though Greenwood had to move out to left back because Uabi came off injured, herself and Hemp, I thought they were really good. I completely agree with you about Hemp. She made more, no City player made more accurate crosses than Lauren Hemp. And no City player made more no player made more key passes than Alex Greenwood yesterday. So, that's just the difference that those two players can make. I think as much as we'd spoken about it on podcast past, I think by Sunday I was like, yeah, especially after what happened at the Joey Stadium, I thought United are going to win this one comfortably. And then obviously for them to be 2-0 down so early on, I was doubting myself a little bit on that one. But they did really well to come back into the game. I thought it was really important they got the goal before halftime. Grace Clinton had a really good game, and they obviously come back into it with that goal from Grace Clinton, and then Melvin Malar scores a brilliant goal to make it 2-2. I think Aoife Mannion, she had a very chaotic game because she comes on, assists that goal, that Clinton header with a brilliant cross ball. And then, once you're getting yourself on a yellow card up against Lauren Hemp, you're giving yourself all kinds of issues, really, in terms of defending. Obviously, that's how it planned out. I think maybe City will be disappointed given that they had 25 minutes or so to come back into the game at 2-2 to try and win 3-2. But it just kind of gave United the excuse to go defensive and defend what they had, I think, the fact that they were down to 10 players. And they did that really well in the end. And obviously were able to secure Champions League football, which Champions League football and an FA Cup final, you have to say for United, that's a really successful season, I think.
Yeah, I think for Martin Skinner, especially when we know he's kind of under the cosh a bit from the fan base, more, not necessarily in his results, but in, I guess, more way he treats players. The fans aren't necessarily too happy about that. So if he has that over his head and a pretty bad season, it's not looking good. But if he can at least get the results on the pitch, we know that's going to keep him in the job. But yeah, Izzy, how are you feeling with this one? Because I think there was a little element of me, as an Arsenal fan anyway, really hoping that City were going to win here and just take the pressure off Arsenal. But yeah, that didn't quite happen.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it was a great game, like as in sort of neutral. Obviously there was the Arsenal question, but to be honest, I have to admit I've loved watching United play this season, and yeah, it was a fiery match. And like Tom said, it was so noticeable just the confidence that was back in City's team with Greenwood and Hemp back, that I actually just really enjoyed watching this one. I was also on duty live tweeting it as well for Fantasy WSL. So the reds, the yellows firing out, I was trying to calm the Twitter universe down. And yeah, it was just really good fun. I think City can be disappointed, but again, like Tom says, like United's defense is just too good, and Fallon Tullis-Joyce is just absolutely something else. So I have to say United deserve every minute of it, and Arsenal should be very, very worried next week, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to that game, so I'm looking forward to that sense of it. But And I'm glad that it's going to be, in one way, I'm glad there's going to be some competition to it, because I think the dead rubber games at the end of the season can be quite boring. But at the same time, I don't necessarily like that when it's my team that are potentially in trouble. Yeah, I mean, we'll come to that game a bit later on in the pod, but I do think this game is one that United really showed their grit, and that they don't necessarily just have to play in that super defensive style that they tend to do so well. But it also shows that Man City have that, even with a lot of injuries, and we know they haven't been in the best form recently compared to what they expected themselves, that they still have that in them. Jacob, what about you? Was this a game that you sort of expected to be a score draw? Because I think I predicted like a 1-0 victory for United in it.
Yeah, I think it's perhaps surprising that it was a score draw, especially because of United's strong defence that we've seen this season. Obviously, the reverse fixture, United won 4-2. Everton scored a hat-trick. So both games being very high scoring. And Sam, as you mentioned before, I had a look at like United's goals conceded over the course of the season. They've only conceded 12 goals in the season, and 4 of those have been against City. Granted, City have only taken a point off them in those 2 games, but yeah, I guess that's credit to United's strength in attack as well, that they've managed to score goals in both of the games. And despite City scoring, I think it's a big result for United to secure Champions League football. About a week ago, when we saw the promise of United having to play Chelsea, City, and Arsenal in a row, it looked like it looked like a tough ask on paper, and especially being 2-0 down. But yeah, it's a big fight back from them. Grace Clinton getting the goal back just before half time is key. It's her 8th WSL goal of the season, which is very impressive, and actually her 3rd headed goal of the season as well. And United showed their strength in the air for the second goal as well. Elizabeth Turland won the header for the second goal, which put Melvin Mallard clean to wrong goal. So yeah, it's a big fight back to secure Champions League football in a derby against your rivals. Big result for United.
Yeah, they will be hoping as well that they're going to do a bit better in the Champions League next year than they did last time they were in there, obviously getting knocked out in the qualifying rounds, but we'll wait and see what comes with that in, I guess, August, September time. Let's move on to the other derby up north that was on this weekend. There was Liverpool 0, Everton 2. Everton now make it 7 unbeaten against Liverpool in the WSL, which is a stat I was a bit surprised. Like it doesn't feel like Everton have been that dominant over Liverpool in recent years, but Tom, Liverpool just haven't been able to get the better of Everton for a while. And even though they did create a lot of chances in this game, Liverpool had 2.2 XG. Courtney Brosnan was just on another level in this game, wasn't it? I thought I'd give you the platform to talk about Courtney Brosnan today.
Thank you so much. I want that platform every day of my life, because she really is something special. You know, I thought she was absolutely incredible in this game. She was so good, made so many brilliant saves, and I really think, I know that Fallon Tullis-Joyce is going to get a lot of plaudits, and deservedly so, and probably is going to be the goalkeeper in the team this season. But I really think that Courtney Brosnan deserves to be in that conversation, because she's been outstanding for Everton this season, and for quite a while now as well. She's consistently up at the top of the charts for most saves every season. And I think she kind of bailed Everton out of this one a little bit, because I think in previous games where Liverpool played Everton have outclassed Liverpool. Like, I think they beat them at Anfield 3-0 a few years ago. I think Jess Park and ran riot for them on loan from City. But that wasn't the case on Sunday. I thought Liverpool were the better team, to be honest. And you know, Brian Sorensen after the game even said that Everton weren't at their best. But yeah, it's just having a player like Brosnan makes all the difference. I thought for Liverpool, Marie Hobinger was really, really good in this game, despite making the mistake that leads to that first goal. She had 5 accurate crosses. No other player had more than 2. She had 3 accurate long balls. Only Rachel Laws had more. She had a match-leading total of 9 key passes. Nagano had 5 key passes, Holland had 2 key passes, and no Everton player had more than 1 key pass in the match, which just boggles the mind that they didn't that they lost 2-0. I mean, Everton didn't have one single big chance in this game, and Liverpool had 3, and they lost 2. I mean, it speaks to what you were saying there about the XG. Everton had 6 shots, Liverpool had 27. I think it was a head scratcher, this one, but they obviously do have something over them, Everton at Anfield especially. I don't know if the pressure's a little bit too much, but I think Liverpool have a lot of reason to be encouraged by this performance because they were doing everything right. It was probably, Rachel Laws should probably be doing better. And yeah, if they cut out some of those mistakes, they're probably getting at least a point out this game. But yeah, Courtney Brosnan, I think should be in that conversation for goalkeeper of the season.
Yeah, I think she's definitely up there. Actually, last week I started putting almost like a short list for each position for a team of the season episode and things that are going to come out after the end of the season. And Courtney Brosnan was in there. I had sort of 4 goalkeepers, which was Fallon Tillis-Joyce, Courtney Brosnan, Daphne Van Donselaar and Hannah Hampton. And obviously 3 of those have been the main keeper for the top 3 teams. Whereas Courtney Brosnan do you know what? I've been calling her all season the best keeper in the bottom half, but Everton are dangerously close to getting in the top half now and ruining in that for me. I think they're only 2 points behind Liverpool. So if Liverpool and West Ham lose next weekend and Everton win, Everton will take 6th place. Courtney Brosnan may well no longer be the best keeper in the bottom half. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like you said, some of the Liverpool... Go on.
I was just saying, she'd be the best in the top half then.
Well, then she's in the conversation, though. I can't. No, she definitely is. I know she's the second top player for goals prevented this season. I think it's something like 6.7, which is really high over the course of a season. I think last season, Kiara Keating was the top player last season. I think she was on something like plus 7.5. So it shows that Courtney Brosnan is sort of almost on that level, albeit she probably has faced a lot more shots than Kiara Keating did last year, just being the team that she's in. But yeah, like you said, Liverpool players did really well in this game, just didn't get that end product. And when I saw a lot of the stats around this game, I was thinking if I hadn't seen the result, I would just be very happy with my fantasy picks this week because I already had Herbinger, I put Holland in, and I was thinking, I think I looked at SofaScore, and I think 3 of the top 4 players in the match were Liverpool players, and the other one was Courtney Brosnan. Because, like you say, Herbinger and Holland and people like that, and Nagano, especially in the midfield, were doing so well. Izzy, how did you sort of see this game? Because I think before the game kicked off as well, I would have expected a Liverpool win. So Liverpool to play in this way wasn't overly surprising, but Liverpool to not be able to score and to not be that clinical in front of goal. I think there is an element of Courtney Brosnan doing very well, but I think Liverpool were quite wasteful at the same time. What were your sort of view on it?
Oh, yeah. This game actually drove me crazy. It was driving me to complete frustration. I don't know why. I had it on at the same time as the other derby because of the clashing scheduling. And yeah, I was actually live tweeting both, but not actually a lot was happening in the Merseyside derby for a long time, and I was just watching on my computer Liv Smith or Marie Hobinger just get the ball and shoot and then nothing and then shoot and then nothing. And I was thinking, well, personally, I have fancy points in on this, so I'm not happy about that. But just generally, I was like, they should be 3 goals up by now, and they're not. And I actually just felt the frustration. I don't know why, but it was a really weird game actually. But yeah, I think defensively they just had a few moments of weakness, and then obviously Rachel Laws, like you say, Tom could have done a bit better, but I guess it just is what it is, and Everton got lucky. I will say on the Courtney Brosnan question, she's been from a fancy perspective last season, I think possibly the highest selected keeper other than Mary Earps maybe, and then this season She's actually got a higher selection rate than Van Domselaar. So the fantasy kids love her. And she's got 11 points this week. So, yeah, if you had Brosnan in your team, which by her selection rate you probably did, it was not a bad week.
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I did have a player playing at this time, but it was Valentinus Joyce, which didn't go well. And my other keeper, which has been, I think, most of the season, was Sabrina D'Angelo, which hasn't been one that's got me much returns either. But because of how the XG was in this game, obviously 2.2 for Liverpool and 0.9 for Everton, I feel it's only right to go over to Mr. XG, Jacob Bernstein. Because I feel like you're going to have a few stats about what players took which shots that had particularly high XG and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, Tom's taken all my stats. I had some.
Sorry, Jacob.
I mean, it was just amazing watching back the highlights. Obviously, Tom and I were at the Spurs Chelsea game during the time of the game. So yeah, as you said, Sam, like looking at a 2-0 scoreline, you would not expect this type of game. Just watching back the highlights, like some of the chances, Taylor Hines had an absolute blinding shot from distance that hit the crossbar. Courtney Brosnan, as we mentioned quite a few times, pulled off some incredible saves from Marie Herbinger, Olivia Smith. Kerry Holland had a header that hit the post, and I think it rebounded off Courtney Brosnan and went wide. But yeah, two players that I wanted to highlight were Olivia Smith and Marie Herbinger. Olivia Smith had a match high of 8 shots in the game, which is more than Everton's team managed in the whole game. She only had 2 shots on target, but accumulated 0.6 XG in the game. And Tom spoke to it before, but yeah, Marie Herbinger had 8 shot creating actions, which was the most in the game, and 0.8 expected assists. But we've spoken a lot about Everton's defence and we've spoken a lot about Liverpool's attack, but you also have to give credit to Cassius Noyes and Karen Holmgard, because ultimately they gave Everton the win. And yeah, it's nice that going into the final day although relegation and the Champions League spots are sorted, it's nice that there is some competition in the kind of mid-table. I think anyone from Everton, Liverpool, Villa and West Ham can finish between 6th and 9th. So there is something to play for in regard to league positions.
Yeah, and I think that pride of, pardon me, that pride of especially trying to finish 5th and 6th and being able to say that either 5th place is best of the rest or, 6th place is a top half finish in the WSL, I think is a real big plus point, especially not just for the players, but I think some of the managers as well. You think of people like, obviously, Liverpool have got Amber Whiteley who's come in. She's sort of had to, I know she was at the club already, but she's kind of had to take over the main role from Matt Beard. So it shows how well she's done as a manager. And then you've got, like you say, Aston Villa, West Ham and Everton that have all got their permanent managers in. That West Ham have got Rhiannon Skinner that are doing a lot better than expected. Everton probably doing a bit better than expected as well with Brian Sorensen. They've both been given new contracts recently. And then Natalia Arroyo, after a pretty dusty start to the season, or start to her campaign anyway, has really got Villa going. We'll come to that match a bit later, but first we're going to move on to the match between the bottom two, which if this had happened about a month ago, this might have been top of the running order, because it would have been a really good match in the sort of relegation battle. But we know Palace are relegated now, but nevertheless, they had Leicester visiting them. On Sunday, Palace ended a run of 4 home losses in a row thanks to an Abby Larkin 97th minute equaliser. So that made it 2-2. Leicester themselves, after only scoring, I think, 1 goal in the final 30 minutes of games all season, also scored in injury time. I think it was 91st minute with a Shannon O'Brien. Really good goal. So, yeah, there's a bit of a late flurry of goals, but this does now mean that Leicester have played all of their away games and they will finish the season without an away win, scoring just 6 goals in those 11 games and conceding 24. I think, Tom, looking forward to next season for Leicester, they obviously are going to be wanting to do better than 11th place, because why would you not want to be doing better than that? They've got a manager that we know is good at building, because she did that in France before she came over to England. Where do you think is their sort of main area to improve on? Because I think for me, the 2 main things are well, it's definitely not their defense, because their defense is pretty good and their home form is pretty good. Like, it's mid-table, but going forward, their struggle and their away form is a struggle. Do you think those two are like the main things? Is there one that's particularly important compared to the other?
Yeah, I think scoring goals is the real issue. You know, they've been missing some really key players up front. Like Jutta Rantala has been out for most of the season. Lena Peterman has been out as well, and then you've also got Naomi Mouchon, who was player of the month, I think, in March in the French league last season. So that, and obviously played for Amandine Miquel at Stattorino last season as well. So you've got three players who are worth a lot of goals in a season who have hardly played this year. And so to have all of them back will be really helpful for Leicester next year. I mean, the away form is a real issue because, I mean, I think they've gone over 600 days without winning a game away in the league, which is just, I mean, that's way too long. You can't go a season without winning away from home. And again, they're another one that's kind of thankful for how poor Crystal Palace have been. But, even against Crystal Palace, they only took 1 point from those two games against Crystal Palace. They cannot be doing that again with the team, with a relegation rival next season. I do think they'll kick on next season. It was a tough start for them. They were really right down at the bottom for a long time, but they kind of got their act together, made their home a very difficult place to come to. I think I wanted to highlight how good Julie Thibault was on the weekend. She was probably one of the best players across the WSL this weekend. She won 8 duels, more than any other player on the pitch. She had 20 defensive actions, more than double the next highest player on the pitch. She obviously had that beautiful assist for the goal that put them in the lead, the clip ball into the box that obviously doesn't end up being the winner, but probably should have if Leicester had closed the shop up a bit more. Yet no player made more clearances. She blocked the most shots. She made 5 interceptions, 3 more than anyone else, and made the most tackles of any player on the pitch. So I really felt like it was a complete performance from her. I think those are the kind of performances that Leicester are going to want to build on, have more players giving that kind of representation of the club. And I do think that they haven't been afraid to make signings in the window over the last few windows. So if I was a Leicester fan, I'd be hoping for similar, and for them to try and kind of kick on and get a few more players that Amandine Miquel wants, and hopefully get those players that she's already got that she wants back into the side as well.
Yeah, I think that would be really important for them to have a much less of an injury crisis, because, like you say, I think that's what's really derailed their season. I remember watching a bit of Naomi Mouchon in pre-season for Leicester. I think it actually might have been against West Ham. They played a game in Australia before the start of the season, and she looked so good. It really reminded me of when Mara Ramirez first came to Chelsea, and she was just this like really fast, really strong, really dominant player that defenders just didn't want to play against. She's only 21, maybe 22 now, 23, something like that, somewhere in that sort of age range. And she just looked so good. So to hear so early on in the season that she's had this ACL and is out for all this time has really been a detriment to her. Jacob, how do you sort of feel about Palace going through to next season? Because obviously they're going to be going down to the Championship, and they seem to be losing quite a few players because, well, I guess they've brought in so many players this season. We don't know that much about the permanent signings necessarily, how long their contracts are, but they're usually a single year, or they've got some sort of break clause if they get relegated, and they've got a few loan players. Do you think Palace are going to be okay next year? Do you think they're going to sort of challenge for promotion again, or how do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question. Always kind of when a team goes down, it's difficult to know how they'll perform the following season. I've been very impressed with Annabelle Blanchard across the season. Her penalty on Sunday put Palace level. So I think she'll definitely be one for them to keep on to if they can. I think, yeah, I think I can see them trying like competing at the top of the league, at the top of the championship. Yeah, potentially bouncing back. On Leicester, I'd second Tom's points on kind of Leicester's lack of goal scoring. Shannon O'Brien's injury time, what we thought was going to be a winner, for Leicester was her third goal of the WSL season, which actually makes her Leicester's joint top goal scorer. I think they've got like two or three or four players on 3 WSL goals this season, which is obviously quite low and speaks to the fact that they are 11th. But yeah, Abby Larkin's close range goal meant that it wasn't a win for Leicester, and it meant that I was slightly relieved because a Leicester win would mean that they would have leapfrogged Spurs into 10th, and Spurs would have gone down to 11th. So, Sam, you were speaking before on trying to finish as the best of the rest. I'm just hoping Spurs don't finish as the worst of the rest.
The worst of the rest, other than Palace, obviously, that are set aside. And Izzy, there was one thing that I wanted to mention to you on this game, because I don't know, but I assume you might be the person that does the scout selection for Fantasy WSL. But whoever did do it, put 3 Leicester or whoever your mystery scout, it's like the Stig, isn't it? Whoever your mystery scout is, put 3 Leicester players in for this game, no Palace players, but including Shannon O'Brien, who I mean, this might just be me picking up on trends and stuff throughout the season, but I seem to see Shannon O'Brien in a lot of the scout selections. And I think that goes some way to show that she has been quite good in this team that have struggled quite a lot with forward players this year.
She has, and I think she's an extremely good player and one that gets a lot of fantasy points, to be honest. I think, Leicester is a weird one because it feels like it's been very spread out in terms of who's doing what. I mean, like you say, Jacob, like there's a few people who have scored 3 goals, which again, not that many considering, but their sort of actions as a team tend to be very spread out. And I think when it comes to things like fantasy, that's kind of reflected in the points. There's no like one like guaranteed person you can rely on. Although having said that, Shannon O'Brien seems to be that person for Leicester from a fantasy perspective. I think probably the scout was expecting less of a fight back from Palace and maybe not a Annabelle Blanchard penalty. But yeah, no, it's a weird one. Palace, again, I think they can compete for promotion if they can hold on to like the likes of Katie Stengel, Blanchard, their key players. I worry that those people are going to get snapped up. And especially with London City Lionesses, who we know have a bit more, well, they're an independent club, they have a bit more money behind them. I think they'll be looking to players like that as well, to keep them in the WSL. So I think it will depend on, for Palace, whether they can retain their good players. And for Leicester, I don't see any reason why they can't do well next season. I remember Rantala last season was one of the fancy players of the season because she was just scoring like nobody's business. And similarly on Mouchon, I remember I put her into my fancy team at the beginning. I also was scouting before the season started and she was a visionary and I was like, aha, I am a genius. And she got like no points and then injured. So that was gutting, but I think they've shown signs of promise. I feel optimistic for them next season. I think, like you've all said, they need to just bring in some experienced players who can kind of rally the team and obviously get to score some goals, as is the point of football sometimes.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing with Naomi Mouchon. I think she was like 4.5 million. She was one of the cheapest forwards, and I was like, I'm absolutely onto a winner here.
Me too.
But alas, no.
Me too. We're all such nerds. Me too. Make it full house.
Never mind. There's another. There'll be someone else next season that will look really good in pre-season. They'll barely have anyone that have purchased them. We'll all go in on them, and then they'll get injured as well. But never mind. It's just one of those things, isn't it? It's just one of those things that happens. And as much as it is annoying, it's probably worse for Naomi Mouchon herself. As much as I care about my fantasy team, her career is probably a bit more important. Let's move on to, well, what I was hoping was going to be one of the games of the day, seeing as Tom and Jacob were there, but it ended up being a bit drab, which is Spurs 0, Chelsea 1. Chelsea, interestingly, were the only team this weekend that won and created more XG than their opponents, which isn't something you see very often. But they, have done it again against Spurs. They played each other 16 times now in all competitions, and Chelsea have won all 16, thanks to a Cat Macario penalty. And I just want to basically hand over to Jacob and Tom. You can hear a bit more from them on Decoding the Match, which is in your podcast feeds, but give us a little snippet, you two, of what happened in this game.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to start. I'll kind of go back to Friday afternoon where I attended Robert Villaham's press conference, and I asked him, just because obviously recent results have been poor, but I think there has been encouragement in performances, notably recent games against Villa, Leicester, Liverpool as well. I think we've had some encouragement. So I asked Robert Villaham if naturally he kind of like analyzes data and like takes encouragement from data post match, even if the results aren't quite going his way. I promise you, I did not force him to say this, but he said, and I quote, he said, "We want to have a high XG." But I didn't force him to say that. But yeah, he also spoke about like wanting to have a high possession and wanting to have like high passing percentage accuracy. So yeah, it was interesting to hear him speak on kind of positive performances, but not getting the results to match. And I think, especially in the first half on Sunday, that's kind of what we saw. I think both Tom and I were surprised in the first half hour of the game that Spurs we were actually on top. I think there was we had some early possession down the left wing. There were some chances, one where Beth England got the ball on the left wing, crossed it in, and it was gathered by Hannah Hampton, but Charlie Grant was there as a kind of right winger, which she started the game as, but couldn't get a shot off. There was another chance where Ash Neville crossed it in, and Olivia Holt had a deflected shot over. And Spurs were enjoying a lot of possession. Chelsea didn't really create much in the first half hour, and then it all changed just after the half hour mark, I think it was, where Stattorino Macario had a shot. It was blocked by Molly Bartrip, and then on the rebound, Stattorino Macario tried to take it around Ash Neville. She fouled her, and it resulted in a penalty to Chelsea. Stattorino Macario scored the penalty, and Spurs responded quite well. They had their biggest chance of the match just before half time. There was a mix up in the Chelsea defence. It was a bit of a makeshift defence with Shirkan Ushkan, who actually put in a good performance, playing at centre back with Mpone. And yeah, Drew Spence got the ball, slotted it through to Charlie Grant, who was through on goal. And then, the shot was saved by Hannah Hampton. It was the biggest XG chance missed of the weekend, 0.65 XG from Charlie Grant. And that was as good as it got for Spurs. I think there was a big change at half time. The momentum shifted to Chelsea. They controlled a lot of the possession. And in the second half, Chelsea definitely could have made it 2 if it wasn't for some heroic saves from Lisa Kopp. The first one, there was a gorgeous left-footed strike from Maika Hamano, which was saved acrobatically by Lisa Kopp. And the second one was a neat double save where Hamano had a shot from inside the box. It was saved, and then Shirkan Ushkan from close range. Lisa Kopp made herself big and pulled off a save, which I think was 0.3, just over 0.3 XG, that chance. And yeah, I think it's a good win for Chelsea, especially because they rotated. We didn't see any of Millie Bright or Lucy Bronze in the squad. We saw Lola Brown come on off the bench. And yeah, it was nice to see. It was nice to see some faces for Chelsea in their rotated team. From Spurs' point of view, I think it was a lot of encouragement to take from the first half, maybe not so much second half. We only had 2 shots in the second half and accumulated 0.07 XG in the second half. So you can really see that drop off from first to second half. And I'm just hoping we can get a win out of the Everton game to make sure that we don't end up 10 games without a win, which would be quite a damning second half to the season. I did have the chance at the end of the game to speak to Lisa Kopp in the mix zone, which was great, and she gave some interesting insight on the game and gave some positives on the way we played in the first half. And I also asked her about the penalty and kind of how she prepares for penalties pre-match, because obviously we're used to seeing maybe Guro Reiten take penalties for Chelsea, and this time it was Stattorino Macario, and yeah, Lisa Kopp spoke on kind of how it's obviously like a 50-50 on which way she dives, and Stattorino Macario went one way, Lisa Kopp went the other, and it was a great penalty for Macario.
I thought it was quite funny, Jacob, that she said that she tries to get in players' heads during the game. That was the good little nugget you got out of her there.
Yeah, and we saw it, didn't we? Because just before the penalty was taken, she was like going up to Stattorino Macario, trying to pull some antics, and I mean it's worth a shout. You've seen it work at times for other goalkeepers. It wasn't to be.
It's a very Dutch goalkeeper thing. I feel like I've just got visions of Tim Krul in the 2014 World Cup. But yeah, Jacob,
exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. But Jacob summed that up perfectly, I think, really. I just wanted to speak a little bit more on how good Chelsea have been this season. I think the most telling stat of how good they've been is that they've taken maximum points off the top three. 18 points off Arsenal, Manchester United and Man City. That just tells a story of dominance really this season. And just the fact they can go unbeaten, win a domestic treble, it's really impressive. And we've seen, like, obviously with Arsenal in the last week or so, how difficult it is to rotate your side and still get points. And, she's gone to Tottenham, one of her biggest rivals. Obviously, nothing's riding on it other than this unbeaten season. But, you're playing Guro Reiten at left back and Serge Nuskin at centre back. And, I think Jacob was mentioning there how they were able to utilize the squad. And I think it was really telling, that she was able to bring Natalie Bjorn back from injury, move Nuskin up into midfield and play Naomi Girma, give her some more minutes, and give Lola Brown her WSL debut. It was just kind of like a textbook perfect game for what she would have wanted, I think, as far as like how many minutes each player in the squad received. And like Jacob said, Lucy Bronze, really bright, both out of the squad, rested completely. Same with Sandy Baltimore. I was about to say Sam Biccarino there, but Sandy Baltimore.
I was rested.
Also out of the squad. You also got a rest from the squad as well. So that's brilliant. Yeah, so well done, Sonia, on that front. But obviously just really impressed with Chelsea, and it's going to be interesting next season how they kick on from that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with Chelsea next season, how dominant they can be, because I don't think they're going to be able to. Well, no, I think they can, but I really hope they don't be as dominant as they've been this year, just because I don't think there's that much. Like we know there's only one relegation spot, there's 3 spots for Europe, and there's a winner of the league. They're really all you play for, and there's quite a big gap between the top 4 and the bottom 8. So I want that first place to be a bit more juicy coming to the end of the season, so we don't get to a point where 2-3 games before the end of the season is already decided and Chelsea have won it again, and they go as far as they can until they get to meet Barcelona in the Champions League and they win everything else. But we'll wait and see what comes of those. Right, we're going to rush through the next 2 pretty quickly, not just because Arsenal lost, but just because we've spent a lot of time talking about a lot of football this week already. Let's move on to the next game, which was West Ham 2, Villa 3. Not a result I was expecting. I know Villa have been on a good run, but West Ham have been really good at home. But this ends West Ham's run of 5 unbeaten at home, and it is now Villa's 4th win in a row. So they've won 2-1 away at Liverpool, 3-2 away at Spurs, 5-2 at home to Arsenal last week, and now 3-2 away at West Ham. So 3 away wins in the last 4 games. They're on the longest win streak in the league. So longer than Chelsea or Arsenal or anyone like that now. But they have conceded 7 goals in that time. albeit scoring 12 at the same time. So they've been the most entertaining team. They are the most informed team in the WSL. And yet Kirsty Hansen still can't get a start. It's amazing, isn't it? But Izzy, how did you see this game? Because I really thought that West Ham were going to win this, to be honest. I know Villa have been in good form, but also Shakira Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, my Fantasy WSL team also thought West Ham were going to win this. And I actually had Shemek in goal because I like to represent my people where I can. And I thought, oh, yeah, fine, clean sheet. No. But no, to be honest, I didn't watch all of this game. I think I caught about half of it. But the half I caught was, deeply entertaining. And actually, it was really just nice to see two teams who have had their struggles kind of really just play end-to-end football. I think Villa, clearly they're finding their feet. And I think, with all the managerial switches that they've had and things like that, that's been really nice to see them just grow in confidence. And actually, the fact that they score so many goals, but they let lots in, to me is just the sort of mark of a team that's just not afraid to kind of now go out there and just go forward and go for it. I think one thing I will say about West Ham is actually I think Verena Hanshaw has been incredible for West Ham since she came in January. Obviously, she got the assist, I think, for, I can't remember which goal it was, but yeah, I think obviously with the likes of Shakira Martinez, I think we've said it before, their attackers kind of taking a shine in their games. Their defense maybe wasn't on point, but I thought it was a really good game from Hanshaw, and yeah, just thoroughly entertaining, to be honest. And fair play to Villa for clinching it in the end, because it probably at one point could have gone either way, to be honest.
Yeah, it was really entertaining. Well, they've both been really entertaining this side of Christmas anyway. They've both had quite varying seasons. Obviously, neither started as well as they're finishing. But yeah, I do agree as well that I think Villa are very opposite to Leicester. When Leicester have had a lot of injuries, especially at the start of the season, they very much went for the tactic of we're not going to concede and then we'll try and get the odd goal, which I think is what most teams would do. Whereas Villa have gone for the idea of we're just going to try and outscore anyone. Think of the game against Arsenal. I remember Miri Taylor playing at centre back, which isn't where she normally plays, obviously, but also and they still conceded a couple of goals, and I think it was Rousseau and Blacksenius, but didn't matter because they were just going to go and score more.
Works, clearly.
And if it works, then that's what's important, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, Natalia Roy, it'll be interesting to see if they can carry this into next season, because Natalia Roy, I think, is someone that comes with a lot of clout behind her, and she'll be wanting to kick on and do well.
I love her. I really love her. She's just so nice, and she's just so honest. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think she's absolutely fabulous. And if she can bring some good players in over the summer, yeah, go on, win it all next season.
Manager of the month in the WSL this month. Actually, every single of the month winner was playing in this game, was involved in this game, with Shakira Martinez Player of the Month and Vivian Asai Goal of the Month.
Yeah, they were, and I think all very well deserved as well. I'm just waiting for Izzy to rock up next week, or maybe the first episode next season or something, with a Villa shirt with a Royo on the back. Go really rogue.
At this point, the way Arsenal playing, I might have
to. Talking of Arsenal, we'll just touch on this briefly. There's not really much to talk about, I don't think. Brighton 4, Arsenal 2. This was Brighton's first ever win against Arsenal that was in 90 minutes. They'd only won against Arsenal once before, and that was in a penalty shootout. Brighton end a run of 5 at home without a win. They have also now scored in all 11 home games this season, which I think is really impressive when you think of they're not a top 4 team and they've scored in all 11 home games. And they've now secured a top half finish. Even if they lose next week, they are definitely finishing top half. For Arsenal, this was definitely a disappointing result. They could have secured second place if they won this game after the 2-2 draw with United and City. But yeah, as we know, we'll move on. That'll move on to next week. Arsenal did win the game on XG. They got 3 XG compared to 1.7 for Brighton. But it was, well, Arsenal not being clinical enough, not scoring as much as their XG, but I think we can put a large part of that down to Sophie Baggerly, who came in very late on. I think it was during the warm-up. She was sort of called up from the bench to start the game. But Brighton being really clinical with their shots and scoring some absolute worldies. I think Jelena Kankovic's first goal was probably the pick of the bunch. The second goal, I have a bit of a gripe about this. I think it looked good. I'm interested to see what Tom's opinion is on this. I think it looked good because it was chipping the keeper. But I think if you're a striker in that position when she's about to take the shot, Manuela Zinsberger is exactly where you want the keeper to be, because she's not on a line, so you can lob her, but she's also not close enough to stop a shot. She's just in that sort of, just below the peak of where you're going to lob. I don't think Zinsberg has been that good in the last few. She's obviously needed to come in because of Van Domsla's injury, but I don't think she looks the player that she used to be, and I don't know why. I assume that's maybe confidence. But yeah, Tom, I'm intrigued to see what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's not the first time as well in this run of 2 games that we've seen that from Zinsberger, where she's kind of been caught in no man's land in a situation like that. I think it might have been Jordan Nobbs's goal for Aston Villa that was quite similar. And I really like Manuela Zinsberger, and I think she gets a lot of unwarranted abuse from fans. And I think that, yeah, obviously she's had a difficult couple of games, but nobody deserves to be abused for trying to do their job. I think it's just worth noting that, because I tweeted out a little stat about this game just this season so far. I was basically saying that, like, comparing Zinsberger and Daphne Van Domselaar, and some of the responses were just not very nice. This is people. Let's be respectful. But just to obviously explain with Zinsberger, I think in the last 2 games, the post-shot expected goal minus goals allowed has been 2.9. So, it's 2.9 more than the average goalkeeper would be expecting to concede. And yeah, just looking at this season in the WSL, the save percentages between Daphne Van Domselaar and Manuela Zinsberger, Van Domselaar's 81% of shots saved and Zinsberger's 51.9%. So that's almost a goal every second shot that's coming at her. In the WSL this season, Zinsberger's played 6 games. She's conceded 13 goals and had 1 clean sheet. Van Domselaar's played 15 games, conceded 10 goals and had 10 clean sheets. But I think, it's good that you mentioned that about Zinsberger and how good she was in the past, because we know that she has that, she had in the 2021 season, she had 80% save percentage, which is the same, just 1% less than Daphne Van Domselaar has now. It's really tricky. I think Zinsberger is a player just completely devoid of confidence at the moment. And I think there's a big issue with the fact that Van Domselaar likes to play on the high line so that the defenders can be higher up the pitch. And Zinsberger doesn't have the confidence, doesn't want to do that. And I think that you're creating a huge gap then when the defenders are coming forward and the goalkeeper's staying back. And when you've got that space in behind, it's just the ball in behind is off. So often it's on, and Kiko Seike obviously takes advantage of that for that wonderful goal. I don't think it's all Zinsberger's fault, but I think, it's really hard to see how. I feel like she just needs a bit of time off, really. I think it would be probably wise for her not to play against United, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on what we need with Van Domselaar, because Van Domselaar might not be fit enough to play, or she might be sort of on the verge.
Even Naomi Williams, to be honest, just protect Van Dom or Zinsberger a little bit more.
I think it's a really tough decision on that, and it's one that from the outside we just don't have enough information to know what the right thing to do is. But hopefully Renee will do the right thing. Moving on to next week, Right, before we move on to next week's games and the final week of the season, one thing I do want to talk about is the game that happened in the Championship. So, if you don't already know, there was a game between London City Lionesses travelling to Birmingham City. This was first versus second in the league on the last day of the season, separated by just 2 points. So, Birmingham City needed a win to be promoted. Anything else, so either London City Lionesses win or a draw, and London City would be promoted. And that's exactly what happened. London City won the game. Michelle Kang and her group have been promoted into the WSL, and she's in the top tier of English football. I am really interested to see how they get on next season, because they've got let's be honest, a squad that has been really strong for the Championship, probably stronger than a lot of the Championship sides have been in the last few years. And obviously, Michelle Kang has pumped up a lot of money into not just London City Lionesses, but she is obviously a majority owner of Lyon and the owner of Washington Spirit as well. And I think she said before that she wants to have a top team, women's team on every continent. And she's certainly on the way to doing that with London City. I think it's going to be a bit of a tough job for Izzy going into next season, or whoever does the pricing at Fantasy WSL, because there's quite a few players here that would probably be quite high scoring if they weren't playing for a promoted side, but at the same time they're a very good promoted side, and I don't think anyone will quite know where they need to land. But how do you think they're going to get on next season?
Yeah, I think I don't see them being relegated back to the Championship. I think with the squad that they have and obviously the resources that they have as well, I think that we can expect them to challenge the WSL sides, and they look really good on Sunday, and I don't see that this promotion to WSL will be too far of a challenge for them. I think, like you say, they have some really good players who know how to score goals. And yes, I'm not looking forward to pricing them come the summer, but I also think, Michelle Kang has a lot of resources and levers to pull, and I think she can pull some big players away from other teams as well. Maybe players who haven't got as many minutes as they like, or sort of have their contracts up in the summer. So I think this will be a really interesting one, not just because it'll be good to have a team who's independent of the Premier League, a Premier League club in the WSL, but also, see how the other teams respond to that as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be there's probably going to be a decent amount of recruitment within the side, because they've got a few players on loan, albeit they've also got quite a lot of players that are there permanently. I know, as Lani has said before, about really believing in Michelle Kang's vision, and that's why she was happy to sort of drop down a level. As I think she was, I don't know if she still is, but I'm pretty sure she was the Sweden captain at the time that she dropped down. And then I don't know how much money they paid her, but hopefully quite a lot, because she deserves it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other players might end up there. And you say about players that might not be quite getting the minutes at the moment at big clubs. And obviously where they're in Bromley. So if you don't know, that's sort of southeast London. So they're not that far away from a lot of clubs, actually. They're not that far from West Ham. They're not that far from Crystal Palace. Brighton playing Crawley, which isn't that far either. It's probably 45 minutes away, maybe. And obviously in the grand scheme of things, they're not that far from Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs. So it's going to be really interesting to see what their recruitment is like. I can see players like the one that came to mind for me was Rosa Kafaji at Arsenal, because partly because I was listening to friend of the pod, Jamie Spanger, talk about her earlier on Arscast. But obviously she's fit and able to play, but is just not being played, not getting minutes at Arsenal, but moving to another WSL side that has, as Izzy pointed out earlier off pod, has a good Swedish connection as well there. That could really be the place for her to thrive. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do, because I think they're going to have really good backing behind them, and it's not necessarily Premier League backing. Obviously, all 12 teams this season in the WSL have had Premier League backing to varying extents, I will say, but they have had Premier League backing nonetheless. Whereas, London City Lionesses with Michelle Kang, that when I did a bit of research, I think her net worth is like 1.2 billion. So hopefully they can go and spend a little bit of money at least on really strengthening that squad and being able to stay up next season. Tom, how about you? How do you sort of see their season going? Because I think this could really be a kickstart for them. I think if they stay up, I can see them finishing like 8th, 9th, something like that, and 5 to 10 years down the line, starting to challenge for Champions League and maybe even the title.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's exciting for the league for sure. You know, you were saying about what players might come and make the trip and play for London City Lionesses. You know, and I was just thinking about, like, you have to look at some of the players who are at Lyon who are out of contract this summer. I think you've got Daniele van der Donk, you've got Eugenie Le Sommer. Could they be tempted? I mean, it's a top flight side. I think it could be interesting to see. Yeah, I'm not fully convinced that they will stay up next year just yet. I think they're going to have the backing and the investment. It's going to be, I'm imagining there's going to be a big turnover of players. And, you know, I mean, Michelle Kang was even saying on Sunday that they had a recruitment meeting on Monday to discuss the day after. No rest for the wicked, I tell you. But, you know, we've seen in the past a lot of teams that make a lot of transfers struggling to gel together. Crystal Palace obviously made a huge amount of changes to their side from last year that didn't quite work out for them. I suppose it's the quality of player that they're going to bring in, really, is probably going to be a level above what Crystal Palace were able to do. But, you know, this season in the Championship, they obviously didn't run away with it. They didn't beat Birmingham this season in the league, and they were very close to not going up. I think what's vital for them is to keep Izzy Goodwin. He's a fantastic footballer. She obviously scored an unbelievable goal in that game against Birmingham. And you mentioned Jamie Spanger there. She did an interview for the Halfway Line with Izzy Goodwin before that game. And it really struck me how confident they are and how much faith they have in Michelle Kang and the vision that she has. You know, she was saying that obviously the goal is to go up, but the end goal that we want to win the WSL, you know, and you love to hear that kind of like ambition from a player. I don't think any of the Crystal Palace players were saying that last season when they went up, and I'm not trying to dig anyone out in the Crystal Palace squad, because that's just realistic. But, you know, maybe that is what London City Lionesses could do. So I really think it's such an unknown for us to see this independent team who's going to be backed, and I really hope they do well next season. I think it is going to be tricky for them. I think it's going to be a bit harder than maybe, I don't know, just because we've seen so many teams go up and struggle in the last few seasons, and we've seen like 11 sides basically consolidate their status as WSL sides. I'd be interested to see how much money they put in to try and stay that way next season.
Yeah, I think the main thing for them is going to be staying up. And I think the thing that at the moment I don't know the answer to is, well, who would go down then? Because I think going into this season, I said it would be close between West Ham and Palace, and I was 50% right and 50% very wrong. But going into next season, I don't really know, because the teams that have been lower down, you think of like Leicester, they've had a bit of an injury crisis, which realistically they probably won't have that twice or something as bad next season. So they're probably going to be a lot better. I don't think Spurs have played that well this season, but I don't think that's a sort of genuine thing that's going to carry on. I think they're probably going to be better next season. And I don't see any of the other teams above them really dropping down that much. I think some teams have probably overachieved a bit. Think about Brighton, maybe might not finish 5th again next season, but I don't think they're going to get relegated. And I don't have a team in my head where I'm like, oh yeah, I could see them going down. Jacob's looking a bit pale at the moment as we're sort of discussing a potential Spurs relegation.
It could make people, like some owners, worried if Michelle Kang starts spending loads of money this summer and they start bringing in really quality players. It could make people, like the powers that be at certain clubs, start, even making managerial changes where they might be better off leaving the manager, or like teams like Brighton. I have a suspicion that Daro Vazosic, and this is based on nothing but my own hypothesis, but I have a feeling he might go for the City job. He's a City group manager. They play a very similar style to what he's been able to implement at Brighton, And then if Brighton don't have a manager, you said earlier they've lost so many big players. 3 of their starting back 5 are going, and they were great on the weekend, and they're losing 2 of those players that started that game. It's a long summer. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Second that as well, not just in terms of managerial changes, but we often speak about clubs needing to invest in their women's side. So I think not only will there be encouragement from London City's Lionesses' promotion to potentially have some managerial changes, but also potentially for the kind of lower mid side to potentially invest more in their teams. If you're seeing that investment from London City Lionesses.
Also, there's a small matter of the Euros over the summer, and I think we know what happens when there's a Euros and you get standout players. Suddenly everyone's... I mean, I remember Van Domselaar in the last Euros coming in last minute for... I can't remember her name now.
Van Veenendaal.
Yeah, exactly, when she was injured. And now she's like one of the best keepers in Europe, so... I wouldn't be surprised if we get some standout talent and then suddenly it's a battle of who's going to pay the most for them. And when it comes to who's going to pay the most, I think we probably know the answer.
Yeah, and I think London City have probably got some quick acting to do on that as well, whereas the bigger teams and the more established teams will probably have quite long-standing scouting networks. Maybe not networks because, the women's side isn't necessarily that large, but compared to the men's, but they will have scouting missions as such going on. There'll be players that they've been tracking, whereas London City Lionesses won't have had the resource to do that in terms of the amount of time they've got for people to do that. And they'll need to now, like you said, they've got a meeting on Monday, or I had a meeting on Monday to discuss, because they're like, right, we're going up. We need to do something because, yes, we've got a pretty good side. We've won the championship, but we need to be a bit better. So, yeah, those sort of players that are showing a bit of form last minute might come in.
Sorry, Sam. I was just going to say, it is incredible that Michelle Kang only bought them in December 2023, and they're in the WSL now.
Yeah, if they can do that in a year and a half, imagine what they're going to do in the next 5 years.
Almost like when you put money into the women's game, you get results.
You might be on something there, Izzy.
Hey,
if anyone's listening and has money,
yeah,
there
if
we go.
anyone's listening and has money, I will tell you my email at the end of this episode. Just drop me a line.
Yeah, Michelle Kang.
Yeah.
PayPal is.
The Decoding the WSL is open to sponsorship.
Yeah.
Moving forward, and if you see me advertising any of Michelle Kang's products in the next few months, you know exactly why. Let's move on to the games coming up this weekend, because we're going to go through these pretty quickly because there's already been a bit of a bumper episode and we've still got a couple of bits to go through. I'm going to start off going to Jacob on this one as the only sort of neutral on the call for this match. We're going to look at Arsenal Man United. It is definitely the biggest game of the weekend. It's the only one that really has something major attached to it in terms of, obviously, it's the Champions League football with second v third and the difference in the qualification. Man United need to win this game to get second place. Anything else, so a draw or an Arsenal win, will be Arsenal keeping second place. And Arsenal, they've not been in great form. Obviously, they've lost their last 2, both away from home, but they have won their last 7 home games. No other team has actually even won their last 2 home games. So Arsenal have got a really good home form at the moment. Something else that I picked out that I thought was really interesting is that Man United have only beaten Arsenal 4 times in their history. And the last 3 of those, Alessia Russo scored the winning goal. And obviously, she's no longer at Man United. So, wonder whether she'll still score the winning goal in this one. Jacob, how do you think this match is going to go?
Yeah, I think it will be a close match. It's nice to go into the final day like having something to play for. We've seen very uncharacteristic Arsenal performances over the last 2 games. We've kind of come to know Renée Sledger's side as being free scoring and kind of strong in defence. So losing 5-2 at Villa and 4-2 at Brighton has been surprising, and it's opened up the gap for United to get that second place. Obviously, Arsenal will have an eye on the Champions League final, and I'm sure that's what they've had in the last couple of games, which with kind of them not being able to catch Chelsea to win the league, and they'll have their eye on that game against Barcelona. So You know what? I'm good. I think it'll be a tight game. I think it'll probably be a like one goal in it, but I'll kind of go with the United win just because we. But I think it'll be very close. I think both teams are very strong in defence, and you're getting the best defence in the league in United, who have conceded the least goals in the league, versus the best attack in the league as Arsenal are the top scorers. So yeah, we're in for a treat here.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to this game. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, I do think it's going to be a bit of biting your fingernails throughout and being a bit stressed about what's going to come, basically, because there is so much riding on this game. And Tom, I think there's a bit of a worry, I guess, for Renée Slager's probably with her team selection, because do you go all out in this game and prioritize this, and then obviously make the players a bit more tired for the Champions League final, or is there enough rest in between? Do you think for it to not be a problem?
I think so. I think that they should have 2 weeks in between, so it should be enough. But I think the bigger problem for Arsenal is the fact that they didn't rest anyone against Brighton and lost 4-2. I think the problems are kind of running a bit deeper for Arsenal right now. I do think it's different being at home as opposed to away. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one finishing 0-0 or 1-1. That would probably be my prediction at this stage, because I think it's a real opportunity for Mark Skinner to show just how far he's taken Manchester United this year. If they can go to Arsenal and win, that kind of I mean, you look at their record against the top six and or the top three, and obviously the Chelsea defeats are disappointing, but that would be 4 points off City, 4 points off Arsenal. That'd be very impressive, I think. I think maybe where United might struggle is obviously if Jade Riviere is now injured and Aoife Mannion is suspended, then you're looking at what they're going to do at right back. Potentially that is Maya Le Tissier going to right back, but then who comes in at centre back? Do you then bring Dominique Janssen back from midfield into centre back? Or so that might be a bit of a concern, but I think the big thing for me, I think, is who's going to play in goal for Arsenal, really, because I think I wouldn't be surprised if Van Domselaar, if they try to rush Van Domselaar back for this one.
I think with the importance of it, I think it would be unsurprising, as you say, for her to be in, because Manuela Zinsberg has not looked great in the last few weeks.
Really
I imagine, Izzy, there's probably quite a few people with Van Domselaar picked in fantasy that are going to be praying for her to be back in the starting lineup, rather than, I can't imagine there's that. I imagine Zinsberg is probably a visionary at this point.
Do you know what? I actually don't know off the top of my head if she is, but I think certainly in fantasy we've seen a lot of people gravitate towards sort of keepers across the league, which has been nice this season. The last year it was definitely dominated by Mary Earps and Hannah Hampton and Zinsberger as well, whereas this season, the likes of Shemek and people like that, Courtney Brosnan, it's it's a lot more spread out. So, but we do have 10. I think it's 10% roughly that have Van Domselaar on their team, so they will be hoping.
I don't blame them, because she's been really good this season. Probably not quite as good as Fallon Tullis-Joyce, which obviously the sensible people, myself included, chose. Let's move on to the next game that we're going to touch. I was going to say the next game of the weekend, but they're obviously all at the same time, 12:30 on Saturday. But the next one we're going to touch on is Chelsea, obviously champions already, hosting Liverpool. This could be the final one for Chelsea. They're going for the unbeaten season, as Sonia's already mentioned. They played each other late on in the season, last season as well, in May as well, which was the famous 4-3 Liverpool win. And the sort of Aggie Beaver-Jones getting put in a headlock by Emma Hayes. But I was having a look back. That was obviously at Liverpool. I was having a look at the last time Liverpool had won at Chelsea. And in the league, they did win in, I think it was 2014 in the Cup, it might have been 13. But the last time they won at Chelsea in the league, Cher Lloyd Swagger Jagger went to number 1 on the same day, which shows how long ago it was.
Liverpool
when
would have to play that at the end. Like, I need
they'll be
That's my
putting it on in
favourite
the changing room.
podcast.
I just thought it was so long ago. It was August 2011, and I was like, what can I sort of reference that to? That this is how
Olivia
long it's
Smith
been.
probably wasn't alive then. Also.
There's definitely probably about half the crowd
Yeah.
on the match on a Saturday won't have been born at that point. Tom, I think you're going to this game, aren't you?
I am, yeah, I'll be at this one. I think of all the stats you've ever said on this show, that might be my favourite. I think that is sensational work, Sam. I am going to be going to this one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I was covering the time these two met at Kings Meadow in the FA Cup semi-final, and it was one of my favourite games of the season, actually, because I think it was just so back and forth. It was a real end-to-end exciting game. Olivia Smith scores that brilliant goal, and then obviously Aggie Beaver-Jones gets that last-minute winner. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's going to be a party atmosphere, of course, for Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. It was a bit more of a muted affair last time they were at Stamford Bridge against Barcelona. So I think it would be nice for them to kind of finish out the season with a bit more of a celebratory atmosphere. And undoubtedly, if they finish the season as unbeaten, that's an incredible achievement. And I think it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be a fun final game of the season, and probably the last chance. Obviously, as far as where you're thinking about Amber Whiteley, it's going to be her last chance to really impress, probably with Liverpool before the end of the season. Well, it will be her last chance. So it's a really important game for Liverpool and for Amber Whiteley to try and show, like you were saying earlier, to try and get into the top half of the table and show what she can do and what they can do.
Yeah, I think she's been really good with Liverpool this season. I don't think Matt Beard was a bad manager. I don't think anyone thinks he is, but I think Liverpool obviously made that decision. It's turned out quite well for them. If you do get to speak to anyone, players and managers after the game, don't be afraid to use that stat. I'll let you use it. Say, how does it feel to get Liverpool's first win at Chelsea since Swagger Jagger was number one? I'll let you have that. Let's move on to the next game. It's Leicester against West Ham. Go for it.
Go on.
Let's go on to Leicester-West Ham. The last time Leicester won at home against West Ham was back in February 2022. So it's been quite a while since Leicester have had a good home result against West Ham. Leicester are winless in their last four as well. They've not had a good run of form at the moment, albeit that is with quite a few away games in there as well. West Ham, however, on the road are yet to keep a away clean sheet this season, and they've only won one away game this season, which was their last one away at Palace, the thrashing of Palace, I guess, 7-1 2 weeks ago. West Ham could get top half, amazingly, this season. What a job that Rianskin has done. If Liverpool lose to Chelsea and West Ham win, they will be top half, and that'll be in the record books forever. Jacob, how do you think this game's going to go? Because we know Leicester have been much better at home than away. We know West Ham have been much better at home than away, but West Ham are the informed team. So, yeah, how do you see this game going?
Exactly. I've been really impressed with West Ham the second half of the season. I think both from their attacking point of view and their defensive point of view, I think they've been really impressive, and I think it would be a good reflection of their second half of the season to get a win here and kind of potentially finish in the top half. I think the story that I'm kind of looking out for, that I'm dreaming of and could happen, is Shakira Martinez is 2 goals away from Bunny Shaw and Alessia Russo in the Golden Boot race. She's on 10 WSL goals, Bunny Shaw and Alessia Russo on 12. And look, we saw her put 4 goals in against Crystal Palace last weekend. I think it would be an incredible feat if she could even get level, or I think it would be such a good reflection on her winning 2 Player of the Months for March and April, and potentially finishing as top goal scorer in the league. Yeah,
I think she's one that when I did that sort of team of the season draft idea and just put my shortlist in for it, I think she's the only player that arrived in January that's on that list because of the impact that she's had in such a small amount of time. Like you say, 10 goals since she arrived in January. She is definitely the top scorer in that time in the league. And like you say, only 2 off the top. I don't think the sort of top goal scorers charts is as I don't know, affluent, for lack of a better word, as usual. You normally get a few more goals, I think, but it is a bit more spread. You do have quite a few players that are on sort of 8 goals plus this season, which is nice to see, albeit I guess not so nice that that's partly because of injuries as well. Obviously, Bunny Shaw's been out for a few games now, but yeah, I'd imagine she would have had a few more if she'd have stayed fit. Let's move on to Villa against Brighton. Villa, as we mentioned earlier, are the most formed team in the WSL. They've won their last 4, which no other team can say at the moment. Brighton have not been great against Aston Villa. They actually haven't kept a clean sheet against Aston Villa in their last 7 meetings. The last time they did was the last time that Brighton won away at Villa. And to show you how long ago that was, Maya Letitia scored the goal for Brighton on that day. And obviously she, in that time, has managed to move club and become captain of that club. Yeah, since their last one just over 3 years ago. Brighton have not been a team that start quickly this season. They've scored 34 goals in the league, which is pretty good, you would say, especially for one of the teams outside of the top 4. But only one of those has come in the first 15 minutes. So a really informed team against a Brighton side that has sort of, I guess, struggled against Villa so far, in recent history anyway, and hasn't been that good this half of the season, but also did really well this weekend just gone. It's a bit of one that I don't know how this is going to go. Izzy, I'm intrigued to hear what you think is going to happen in this game because, yeah, like Villa look resurgent, but at the same time, Brighton just won against Arsenal.
Yeah, I feel like for me this feels like a Villa win, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see goals from both teams, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they both kind of throw everything at their attack and maybe leave the defense a little bit shaky. But yeah, to me, this just feels like a bit naturally more one that might be suited to Villa, but potentially could be a really, really good game in terms of just a goal scored and attacking potential.
Yeah, I think this might be the highest scoring game of the weekend. I'd potentially put it in for that. I think the only one that might challenge it is probably City against Palace, which we'll move on to next. There's not really much up for grabs in this game. City, we know we're going to be finishing 4th. Palace, we know we're going to be finishing 12th. Palace haven't won away in their last 8 games, or 8 away games, I should say. City, however, are unbeaten in 4, so they're looking a bit stronger in their recent form. And they have scored in all 10 of their home games so far, and now they are playing against the team that are bottom of the league. I have not planned ahead well because I've still got my triple captain left to use. So I think after the game at the weekend, I think I might be putting it on Lauren Hemp for this game because I imagine she's probably going to start this game. Why not? And hopefully she might get Shakira Martinez-esque performance against Palace. Tom, how do you think this game is going to go? Because I think that Palace are going to want to see out the season with a good performance, but I think City are just going to be too strong for them.
Yeah, I've got a really bad feeling for Palace on this one, I got to say. I'm a bit concerned that this could be quite a big score for City. I think, take out all their frustrations of this season on Paul Palace. But Palace did show a lot of heart this weekend, getting that late. I was so delighted that they did get that late winner or leveler just for the fans who come out. And they've had great support this season. Every game I've been there, they've been loud and proud of their team. But I don't think it's a bad shout, triple captain on Lauren Hemp. I think I'm going to bring in Carolyn because she's still a visionary and obviously striker. So you can feel free to have that one. You gave me shit
that, Tom, but now
I will say that I've had Carolyn for 4 or 5 weeks now, and I reckon she's maybe got me a collective 10 points. She's not been great. Even though she looks really, she's one of those players that if you were just going by sort of watching her playing, you didn't know how many goals and stuff she'd scored, you would think she's a superstar because she's so confident on the ball and so attacking, so threatening. But yeah, she's not had much in way of returns, but it's worth a go. I'm going to keep her in my side. I don't think I'm going to take her out to put Lauren Hemp in. So hopefully she does quite well. Let's move on to the last game of the 6. Obviously save the best to a last for you, Jacob. It is Everton hosting Spurs. the numbers don't look great for Spurs at the moment. They're winless in 9, which is the longest streak in the WSL. And I think, like you said earlier, finishing the season with another match without a win would be quite damning for Spurs. But Spurs do have a couple of things that they can really focus on for this game, because they haven't kept a clean sheet away from home yet, and they've also never won away at Everton in any competition. So there's a few sort of records here that could be set for Spurs. And after Everton, let's be honest, got outplayed at the weekend. I know they won the game, but they did get outplayed. They know Spurs know that Everton can be got out here.
Yeah, I think both teams will have motivations going into the final game. It's not a complete dead rubber. I think for Everton, the biggest potential is that they could finish above Liverpool and into the top half with a win, which I think will be a big achievement for them, especially because Liverpool are playing Chelsea. So there is the opportunity for that. From a Spurs point of view, I think, they'll want to get a win to kind of get rid of that that winless run. If you kind of take the second half of the season so far, that winless run is most of the second half, is basically all of the second half of the season, bar 3-2 win against Palace in January. Looking back at the games between Spurs and Everton this season so far, Spurs won 2-1 in the league. At home, they accumulated 2.9 XG, which is the second most we've accumulated in any game this season. However, they also faced each other in the FA Cup, and Everton won 2-0 at Everton. So they're one win each in regard to clashes this season. I'm not very optimistic, to be honest with you. And Everton have had a good run towards the back end of the season, getting a couple of decent results. So my optimism is withering.
Yeah, we'll, I guess, wait and see what comes with that. At least you know that Spurs are safe and that there's nothing, even if you lose this game, it's not the end of the world, and there is still next season. Let's move on from, looking at the final games of the season to our little fancy WSL update. Izzy has gone over and above this week to get the most up-to-date data possible.
I have indeed.
Izzy, kick us off.
Well, I'm delighted to report that the top transferred in this week at an astonishing 1,399 transfers in is none other than our own Shakira Martinez, which is quite a way above the second most transferred in, who was transferred by 800 people, and that was Kirsty Hansen. So it's really nice to see that sort of surge at the end of the season. I mean, obviously, why wouldn't you have Martinez in your team at this point? I say I don't have her in my team, but it seems to only make sense. But we've had.
You need to start taking your own advice, Izzy.
Yeah, I really do. That's going to be my goal for next season, is to take my own advice. Vivasei had 500 transfers in. Kirsten Kasperai, 814. We know she likes a goal from defence, so maybe she might be one for this weekend's fixture against Palace. The fallers, unsurprisingly, continue to be Viv Miedemar, Jill Roord, and Mary Fowler, despite Jill Roord making it back on the bench. The crisis at City resumes. Actually, it's pretty much all the big scorers that have fallen this week. Joanna Ritten-Carnered, Elizabeth Turland, Ella Toon have all gone down significantly. So people are clearly targeting these smaller teams. In terms of scorers this week, I think it will come as no surprise to anyone that Kankovic was one of the highest scorers, which I will breeze over now. But it was nice to see some new faces get on the score sheet. Jean-Francois of Chelsea got 6 points, which, to be honest, the midfielders this week were very, very low scoring. Jelena Kankovic had 18 points and Jean-Francois was next on 6. So it was not a good week for midfields, I don't think. But we also had some stellar performances from a lot of visionaries. Tom, you mentioned Thibaut. She got 10 points, and so did Stenovic of Everton, who's also a visionary. Rebecca Knack obviously is back with her famous headed goals, so she's also another one that might be a good idea for Saturday. And in terms of the forwards, Katerina Macario has been a visionary for pretty much this entire season, and she continues to score goals, and people continue to not put her in their teams. She equaled Rachel Daly's 12 points this weekend, so that's one to maybe keep in mind. And Katja Snois as well, a visionary, 11 points. Abby Larkin, 10 points. It was a great week for visionaries, despite everyone transferring in Liverpool midfielders like Sam.
Yeah,
that didn't work.
and not transferring in Kat Macario,
Yeah,
but never mind.
exactly.
And I've only got one Chelsea player as well, so I could well have done. And the only Chelsea player I've got didn't even play, Millie Bright. Never mind.
We go again next season.
We go again next season. Yeah, next season. I've still got this season. I'm still just about in the top 200 still, which was my target. I'm very happy with that. I've been
No,
over
you
the
should
moon.
be. We've had over 41,000 players this season, so top
Wow.
200 is not to be sniffed at all.
I am very happy with that. Although not as happy as I heard. We have someone on the call that is number 2 in the world on Fantasy NWSL by 1 point.
Yes, 1 point.
You're royalty.
I honestly, I am second in Fantasy NWSL at the moment. But I triple captained Esther this weekend, Esther Gonzalez. So she's a striker for Gotham, top scorer in the league, playing the worst defense in the league, 0-0.
Yeah, that was. I was watching that come in, just thinking, yeah, that's not going to be a good one.
Honestly. Yeah. So, but we'll see. I mean, I took my photos when I was top of the table before the last game.
Nice.
You know, I had my tourist little walk around. So I'll have that framed. Be all good. Doesn't matter what happens the rest of the season.
Exactly.
Got that one in the bank.
And if anyone listening wants Tom's signature, just get in contact with him. And I think they're pretty cheap, aren't they, Tom? £20 or something.
1,000 at the moment. Yeah.
Good shout out as well for friend of the pod, Charlie Parks. She is 6th in the world, so not too far behind you. In fact, only 4 points behind you. So she's snapping at your tails as well. But yeah, Fantasy NWSL is going well. And I believe there's another game coming up, isn't there, Izzy?
There may be. Yes, let's just say it's going to be a fun summer, and we will make sure that there's still lots of fantasy football to get involved in. Can't think what would be happening, but you know.
Yeah, you're so cryptic. The listeners never figure it out.
Yeah, that's Seven's tournament fantasy football.
Yeah, I know. It's wild.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to be quite as interesting as maybe a slightly bigger tournament that's going on. But yeah, that's our Fantasy WSL segment for, well, the penultimate time, I guess, in the regular season. You may hear a little bit more. It's some dedicated podcasts over the summer as well. Let's move on to the real reason that everyone's here. As we know, it is Know Your Stat. Yes, listener, it is Know Your Stat. It is our little game on Decoding the WSL. It is essentially a game of categories. I will give a category to Izzy, Jacob and Tom, and they will take it in turns to name correct answers for that category. We have 3 main ones today, and if you win one each, we will have a decider. Although if someone wins more than one, then we'll keep the decider for another week. We have, at the moment, I did put a little leaderboard out in our group chat earlier, and at the moment, Izzy is the number 1 player for Know Your Stat. But Tom and Jacob, if either of those win the match today, they will be overtaking Izzy as the number 1 player. So it is a lot to play for.
It's like a championship.
We're going to start the first round. We're going to go Jacob, then Tom, then Izzy. And the first round is, I would like you to tell me any one of the 22 players that scored on the final day of last season. So I'll run you through the results quickly so you've got an idea of what they were. The results were Arsenal 5, Brighton 0, Bristol City 0, Everton 4, Leicester 0, Liverpool 4, Man United 0, Chelsea 6, Spurs 3, West Ham 1, Villa 1, Man City 2. I really enjoyed that, listener. You won't be able to see this, but Jacob and Tom were furiously writing that down. Izzy was just looking at the clouds.
I was trying to remember watching them and then realised halfway through that I can't remember watching any of them and saw the others writing it down thinking, wow, that was such a smart thing to do.
That's kind of why I read it out, and a little bit slowly as well, expecting me to write it down. But no, you're obviously very confident, so maybe it'll be fine. As the leading player for Know Your Stat. So yeah, we're going to start with Jacob, and then Tom, and then Izzy. Jacob, off you go.
Beth England.
Beth England, yep, she did score the opening goal in the Spurs game.
Viviana Miedema.
Yep, she scored for Arsenal.
Beth Mead.
So you should have written them down, Izzy. Beth Mead did not score, unfortunately.
Drew Spence.
Drew Spence did score for West Ham, for Spurs, against West Ham. She got the final Spurs goal.
Fran Kirby.
Fran Kirby did score. She got the final goal in that 6-0 win.
Jessica Naz.
Yep. You have got all three Spurs players, as I thought you might, Jacob. Well done.
I was there. I remember it very well.
See, I was at the Arsenal Brighton game, and all I can remember about that day is Viviana Miedema scoring.
I will say as well that there is a player that scored an own goal on the day, and if you get that player, I will let you have it.
I'm going to go Khadija Shaw. I've completely forgotten, to be honest, but I just think on the balance of likelihood probabilities.
Bunny Shaw did not score for Man City, so Jacob takes the first round.
Well done, Jacob.
Yes, yeah, I'm blaming that on. I remember watching all five at once on various screens because we were all trying to live tweet it. So I'm blaming some kind of level of ADHD situation on why I couldn't remember a single thing about any of them.
I'll tell you the players you could have had. So in the Arsenal game, you had 2 goals for Alessia Russo, an own goal by Yorlin Karabali, and a goal for Frida Marnham. There were 4 goal scorers for Everton: Katja Snoys, Sarah Holmgard, Emma Bissell, and Martina Piemonte. Liverpool had only 2 goal scorers. There was Sophie Roman Howe got the opener, and then Leanne Kiernan got a hat-trick. Chelsea had 2 goals for Mari Ramirez, 1 for Johanna Rettenkanered, Sjoeke Nusken and Melanie Loipols got 1 each. Rico Wecki got the goal against Spurs, and then the 2 goals for Man City were Mary Fowler and Lauren Hemp, and then Rachel Daly got the 1 for Aston Villa. So Jacob takes the first round. We'll move on to round 2. This one will be Tom first, then Izzy, then Jacob. This one is, I would like you to tell me the 25 players that have had the most progressive passes in the WSL this season. So this is any player, for reference, that has had 77 or more progressive passes. There are, obviously the top 25. There's 25 on the list. Tom, to go first.
Mariona Caldente.
Caldente is on the list. She's number 1, 192.
Katie McCabe.
Katie McCabe is number 3 on the list, 135.
Ashley Neville.
Yep, she is number 15 with 86.
Leah Williamson.
Yep, 129.
Myla Tissier.
Myla Tissier is also over 100. She's got 110.
Evelina Sumanen.
Evelina Sumanen is an incorrect answer, unfortunately. She has had 75, so she was the 26th player.
Oh.
As close as you could be without being correct, unfortunately.
Yui Hasegawa.
Yui Hasegawa is, number 6 on the list.
That was literally what I was about to say. Lucy Bronze.
Lucy Bronze is number 7 on the list.
You won't believe that's what I was going to say. Millie Bright.
Yeah, Millie Bright. Number 22 on the list. Surprisingly low. I thought she'd be higher.
Kirsten Kasparov.
Kirsten Kasparai is just about in the top 10. She's had 103.
Emily Fox.
Emily Fox is a correct answer. She's number 5 on the list.
Grace Clinton.
Grace Clinton gives Tom the round because she's an incorrect answer. Grace Clinton has had 54, so she is number 61 on the list.
Oh, so that was pretty shoddy for me.
But pretty good round. 10 correct answers out of the 25 is quite impressive. The ones that you could have had were Alex Greenwood, amazingly, even though she's missed so much in the season.
Wow.
She's number 19 on the list, just ahead of Alexi Potter. There was Claire Wheeler, Fran Kirby, Jade Riviere, Jill Rord, Jordan Nobbs. Leah Alexandri was second on the list. No one got her. Leo Habby, Leah Valti, Marie Herbinger, Shirka Nuskin, Steph Catley, Taylor Hines, and Yuka Mamiki. But pretty good round there. We'll see if you can get as many on the next one. So this one will be Izzy first, and then Jacob, then Tom. I would like you to tell me any player that has had more than 30 shots in the WSL this season. So more than 30 shots. There are 22 players on the list.
To clarify, they don't have to be on target?
They don't have to be on target.
I don't know why that makes a difference. Alessia Russo.
Yeah, Alessia Russo is number 1 with 68.
Bunny Shaw.
Bunny Shaw is, unsurprisingly, on the list. Number 4, though, with 52.
Viviana Miedemar.
Viv Miedemar has 39.
Mary Fowler.
Mary Fowler is an incorrect answer. A very surprising incorrect answer, I'll give you that, but an incorrect answer nonetheless. She's had 23 shots.
Beth England.
Beth England is on the list. She's had 39.
Frida Marnham.
Frida Marnham, amazingly, is third. 54 shots.
She loves a shot.
Elizabeth Turland.
Elizabeth Turland is second on the list. This is a very head-to-head here because it's sudden death almost between you two. 1 round each so far. This is for the victory.
Aggie Beaver-Jones.
Yep, she is on 42.
Mariona Caldente.
Mariona Caldente is an incorrect answer. She has had...
No.
I can find her on my list. She's had 28 shots on shots. So not far off, only 2. But incorrect answer nonetheless. That does mean that Tom still needs to give me a correct answer to take the round.
Shoot. I was about to say Mariana Caldente as well. I'm sorry, Jacob. I know. That's just... Nikita Paris.
Nikita Paris has 48. So she is a correct answer and Tom takes the victory.
Congratulations.
I'll run you through quickly the players that you could have had. There were more Arsenal players on this list as well, even above Caldente. So you could have had Caitlin Ford, Kat Macario, Ella Toon, Grace Clinton, Jill Rord, Johanna Witten-Conrad, Katie Stengel, Kiko Seika, Myra Ramirez, Olivia Smith, Rico Wecki. They were both in the top 5. Rachel Daly, Shirka Nuskin, and Stina Blackstenius. I was so sure that once Izzy said they don't have to be on target, do they? I thought you were just going to say Stina Blackstenius straight away.
I should have. The key feature of Stina Ball doesn't have to be on target and it doesn't have to be on side either.
That is prime Stina mantra.
Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations, Tom. That is your second Know Your Stat victory, and maybe I'll put the leaderboard on social media somewhere just to. I'll make it look.
Definitely do it now. Yeah.
I'll make it look a bit
Next
better.
screenshot being number 1 in WSL.
I'll make it look a little bit better than just the Excel spreadsheet that I've got at the moment. I'll put some branding on it and make it look nicer. But yeah, thank you all for joining me for this episode. Thank you, listener, if you're still there, because that has been a bumper episode. I wasn't expecting this to go on for. We've been on the call for just over 2 hours. It's been a big one. I'll cut it down a little bit for you to listen. Don't worry. But yeah, thank you all for coming on, listener. If you haven't checked out Tom and Jacob's episode that was up yesterday, go and have a look. It's called Decoding the Match. It's on the Decoding the WSL feed. It's a really good episode with basically your story through the day, isn't it, at the Spurs Chelsea game, and a little bit before the game, a little bit during the game, and a little bit after as well. And you get to hear from Jamie Spanger at halftime, and you get to hear from Lisa Kopp as well. It's all really good stuff. But yeah, thank you all for joining me today, you three, and thank you, listener, for joining us as well. As ever, if you enjoyed the episode, do make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, go and subscribe to the Stattorino YouTube channel for more analysis content. There is more coming over the summer, so stay tuned for that and get subscribed ready. But yeah, thank you again for listening, and I will speak to you at the next one.